Hello, peeps. This is Jorge from the Big Band Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Richard Firth Godbehere. He is a independent consultant in the area of emotions, and he does research. And this is very interesting to me because, well, obviously, I run a company that does emotion recognition through technology. So we had a back and forth on Twitter a few weeks ago, and I thought it'd be interesting to have him on the podcast and chat, what about his perspective and also, going forward as to how he sees this evolving. So, Richard, thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure.
So, Richard, tell me a little bit about you. How did you end up in this area I know emotions are a big topic, but specifically in the terms of, specifically with technology applications and technology.
It's kind of a combination of my two lives. In one hand, I research past, present, future emotions. I'm a historian by training who then did a PhD, which was a mix of history, psychology, and linguistics. And so I'm very, very interested in emotions, the science of emotions. But I'm also a major nerd. So there's a tech side that I've been drawn to all the way through. And sort of the history training also sets me up for being a futurist, which is where I'm finding myself doing more. And so, of course, looking at AI and reading about the different forms of AI and thinking, I think there's something missing here. It drew me in through that. And so I just mostly started writing about it, which is I think where you found me. And then
Correct.
people have approached me and sort of said, so what should we do then? And so I've started doing some more of that. So yeah, it's a combination of having a history of training in emotions and being a massive nerd.
And so far, so our conversations begun because of that article that you wrote for
Yep.
This is next, or the publication This Is Next on Medium.
Yep.
Can you talk about a little bit about that, the topic of the article, just for the context of the conversation?
Yep, sure. When I look at a lot of AI that's doing emotions out there, what I tend to see is a habit to draw on the science of Paul Ekman and friends, and the idea of basic emotions, the idea you can read emotions from a face. And that's how you know these 6 basic emotions. And the problem with that is that science is very old, and it's come a long way since then, and quite a bit of it's been debunked. Very best, it's been altered. There's theories that don't think there are any basic emotions. There are people who say that the facial expressions only work in particular cultures, and if they're exaggerated. And so I wrote about that. I wrote about the fact that there's this. Paul Ekman did some wonderful science at the time, but things have moved on. And people have looked into it and things have changed. And I basically said, what worries me is with all the technology converging on this one set of science, this one cultural set of emotions, it's kind of going to force everyone to have those emotions, especially if it gets into the legal profession and places like that, where if you're not pulling the right face in an airport, you get pulled over. Correct. Even though all it is you are from Croatia and you're stressed, so you pull a different expression to someone who's American, something like that. And basically that was the gist of the article. I am actually writing a sequel, watch this space, so that's coming soon.
Yeah, so in terms of because that's how we started our conversation. I read the article, and it's something that we're aware of here in the tech. Specifically with the more you start doing it, the more you this whole stuff, I'm totally against just going and saying, oh, this is like the theory, and just taking it for what it is. It's more about questioning and not taking it for granted. And we found that when we start doing it, all these other questions starts coming up, right? And then we just cannot. It's irresponsible for anybody who's doing this stuff to ignore it. It's specifically because of the types of the stuff that could result from it. And one of the bigger things with this, the theory, as you say it, is that yes, there are 6 basic emotions, but like the data set that we have is from Mexico, most of it. I mean, and we just can't claim that everybody's a Mexican. I mean, I mean, and then you go to specifics like surprise. Surprise can be negative also. I mean, so there's mix and matches of emotions, not just simple as surprise and happiness.
Yes, and also within those emotions, if you look at the 6, I don't actually think there are 6 basic. I think it's more complicated.
Yeah.
For example, take anger. There's no one anger. There are dozens of angers. In fact, the Ekman facial expressions he uses 2 different images for anger. And there's all sorts of different types of anger. The anger you get when you kick your table accidentally and your toe hurts is very different from the anger you get when someone steals your car. There's all sorts of, and all of them, there's different fears, there's different surprises, I should say. There's subtleties in there, and these shift. And I read quite a few. I read now a lot of posts. Articles about AI emotions, and they always start with, we took this set of faces that from the 1970s, obviously they don't say that, and that's what we're basing everything on. And I just think, no, don't do that. Think a bit more. I have seen a growing awareness. A lot of people have contacted me actually saying, actually, we read your article and thought, yeah, can we talk more? Like now, for example.
Correct.
Yeah, I kind of, which is nice. Feels good.
You know, when we have contact with anybody who's interested in this stuff, going from level to level. I mean, there's in the U.S. and Europe, they're a little more aware of this stuff.
Yeah.
Not the theory, but the technology itself.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas where I'm located across the border from the U.S. This is, I mean, they'll take it as a given. Whatever we say, it's godlike. So it's like they don't question the theory. They don't even care. I mean, it's like, oh my God, you can tell us if somebody's afraid or somebody doesn't like their stuff. I mean, it's as simple as that. But the truth of the matter is, it's not as simple as that. And I do know that the very few of us that are doing this stuff, we're all pretty much using the same theory.
Oh yeah,
we're all using the same theory, and it's not right.
I mean, I think the theory works in a computing setting. This is one of the things that attracts you to it, because it's kind of binary. That's happy, that's not. That's sad, that's not. Whereas actually, if you look at emotions, everything that makes up an emotion, it's kind of complicated. It's nuanced, and it will take more than, say, 10 lines of code to get it in. It will take 10,000, and that's one of the problems. 10 million lines of code, even, just for one. So I can see the attraction within tech, for this system, because it looks nice, and it kind of sort of works kind of sometimes if you're in the right place with the right people and they pull the right expression exactly as you want it. But I don't think people are as aware. I think it's because it's a folk idea. We all know what emotions are, right? And actually we don't. It's a fairly modern idea. Even the idea of emotion is kind of in the English speaking world, at least, it's a couple of 100 years old. Before that, there are all these different nuances. There's passions and sentiments and affections and different types of feeling, all had their little different understandings to this brain thing, emotion, that we now have, which isn't really a brain thing at all. Most of it happens around here. Stomach and the heart and it's even that. I mean, you tell people that emotions is a recent construct based upon feelings.
We have to. A big part of doing this stuff is educating the market, but not just on technology, but the emotion part. Because what I tell people is that emotions are not just what appears in your face. It's the cluster. It's your body language. If you go deeper, it's like the pulse. I mean, there's many ways to notice stuff, and it's very complex.
There's the context you're in is massively important. What's going on around the person? You you show someone close up with an anger face and a fist pumping, and you see someone who's really angry, and then you back off, and you see them watch the goal that their football team has just kicked into the net, and you see a guy going, yeah, because he scored the goal, you know, and it's that context matters. And it's exactly the same face and action as someone who's about to hit someone, but it's completely the opposite. They're joyful.
Correct.
You know.
Correct.
And so it's a complicated thing. And that's what I do. I try to educate the world as to how complicated emotions actually are. I think that's my calling in life now, to say it's all kind of difficult. Psychologists too. I talk to psychologists quite a lot. They like to simplify emotions. Not so much recently, because they're getting more nuanced as mental health is becoming more mainstream, for lack of a better word. They're realizing that there are a million different forms of depression, not one, and things like that, you know. Yes, it's not just the face.
So what theories beyond the Ekmans have you seen that are pushing it? Let's say pushing it. Let's say they're right.
Right is a difficult one. I think all of psychology is still in a bit of it's early days. I have a friend of mine who says when he reads, because he's a biologist, and he says when he reads modern psychology papers with their positive claims that this is right and that is right, it reminds him of reading papers on evolution from 1900 and 1901, where they're absolutely certain how evolution worked, but they hadn't even discovered the genome yet. They hadn't got a clue. Not really. It's the same. We haven't really mapped the brain in any detail. We're getting better, but the best measurements we have are down to 10,000 neurons, which is still a lot. So we really haven't measured it. I think, where was I? What was I saying? Yeah, I think, sorry?
Yes. Any theories that are pushing it?
Yeah, the theories I like the most. There are theories called the psychological construction of emotion. Lisa Feldman Barrett is particularly proponent of this. There's also James Russell and a few others. And what that says is that emotions they're an emergent property of a construction in the brain and the body of various things. So one is the environment you're in. One is your development, how you learned to react as a child. The other is your culture, how your culture expects you to react to an emotion. The third is the language you use. So some languages have a word for emotions that other languages simply don't have, or they seem similar, but they're not quite the same. You know, when you actually look at them, there's differences. And so on, all sorts of different elements. So all happen at the same time when you're presented with a situation, usually a change in expectation. So if everything's going along normally, you don't really notice anything. But if something you expect to happen doesn't, for positive or negative, all of this comes out, including feelings, including the neurochemicals making you feel a certain way. And you interpret that feeling, you interpret all this other stuff. And that's an emotion, which is why I said we're talking 10 million lines of code here, because to build that construction. But that theory doesn't miss any of the things that the other hypotheses or theories do. It needs work. It's very big and cumbersome, and there's a lot of, but what about that? How does that work in it? But to me, if you read emotions in history, if you read emotions in other cultures, if you read quite widely, it's the only one that fits all of that. So I'm leaning that way, if I'm leaning anywhere. But more research needs to be done, basically, like all of psychology, to be honest.
And what have you talked? I mean, if you have beyond me or the company that I represent, have you talked to other companies that are doing this? And what is their response to your? I mean, you already mentioned that they were like, oh, let's talk more. But specifically when you challenge the theory, it's not like, oh, we got to start all over again.
No. I've had the main responses I've had is one is, yeah, well, it's kind of working, so there. That's one of them. I'm like, yeah, well, go outside your building with it. Let's see what happens. Another one is, oh, that's interesting. Well, funnily enough, we're not using his system. We're using another theory. And the other theory will be someone else's basic emotions, or it will be an expansion of Ekman's basic emotions, or it will be something that's basically the R. We're doing the same thing. They're just labeling it differently. But they're trying new things, which is all wonderful. Let's try new things. Let's throw things at the wall until it sticks. I think that's what emotions in AI will be brilliant for.
Yeah, it's
In
all
a way,
experimentation.
yeah, in a way that we can't do it with people, because we can't open somebody's brain up and look at it while they're experiencing emotions in real time. But we could do it with a computer. We could try things, and when it all starts to work, go, hey, hang on. The third one is my favorite one, which is, would you like to work for us for a while? Which I quite like. We need a guru. Come down the office and have a chat and a meal, and there you go. And bill us for the day. I'll do. And then that seems to be one that happens as well. So I think there's more. There's no one yet said, although they maybe wouldn't, you're wrong. It's definitely that. Where with Paul Ekman, all the way, apart from Paul Ekman, I don't know if he's read it, but he might do this. It's definitely correct. Those basic emotions are real. Go away. Everyone's kind of gone, oh, hang on. This is tapping into something in our back of our minds here, which is nice, because that's what I was trying to do with the article.
Yeah. In whatever follow-up article you have, you know, I believe it's going to be even better, because I do know that the one you wrote got a lot of traction. I mean, you know more than I do. I just saw because I've saw before you and I interacted. I saw it probably like for 3 weeks before. Yeah. I believe it was posted elsewhere.
Yeah.
So
it was syndicated.
Yes. So it was already on my radar before you and I started going back and forth. So from your perspective, what is the ideal outcome from, you know, all this, all over I mean, it's all over the place, but at some points we have to connect somewhere. How is that going to happen?
How's it going to happen? Do you mean how are we going to develop this, or what's the best outcome for Emotion AI eventually?
Yeah.
I think Emotion AI is a very important thing, and for lots and lots of reasons. One thing that I mentioned recently to someone is the idea of an emotion system, say Alexa or something like that. That if you are somebody who genuinely suffers from something like anxiety and depression, or feels down, there's something there with enough emotional understanding and AI that you can talk to it. And you could, because healthcare professionals in mental health services are overwhelmed because there aren't enough of them anywhere. So if you could have one at home on your coffee table and it can respond to you, I think that'd be really, really good thing. Now, the question is, how can we get there? And I think we can get, I think personally that you can use AI as a way to test emotions and test theories of emotions and find out which ones seem to work. Because when you go through all the different ideas, I think you'll construct something from all the different things. I think they've all got some truth in them somewhere, that will eventually work. And so for a start, you've helped the psychologists out because you've done something they can't really do because they don't quite. But secondly, you've got something that is, from one hand, able to help, as I say, with people with serious problems. I mean, it could save lives. Yes. On the other hand, you can also have computer games where your characters in your computer games actually have emotions. And they remember. When you go into that computer game, you interact with someone rather than just being them having 5 sentences that they can say to you. They can remember if you're rude to them and treat you accordingly for the rest of the game. You may have to go and grovel and apologize to this character because you were rude, or if you were nice to them, they'll treat you differently. Yeah. So on one hand, great entertainment too. So there's all sorts of outcomes that I think would be really good. I think the best outcome would be personally, from my point of view, use it. It's a wonderful testing ground for theories of emotions. I mean, it's a wonderful way to say, let's feed this in and see what happens. And if it's all a bit weird, nobody's been hurt, not cut any brains open, no one's actually been shot yet. You know, so I think that's where I see it going for me. Anyway.
So you see, okay, so you brought out something interesting, which is healthcare. I mean, from our perspective. So you're the perspective of from the research perspective. I'm from the perspective of getting it out there. Yeah. and being useful. More importantly. So from our perspective, so we have to think about adoption, right? So certain things have to be true in order for, depending on who your client is or where you're going, who's going to adopt it first. So one of the places that we have not yet focused on is healthcare. I do have a friend who's doing something like what you're saying, but he's doing it with a chatbot interface.
Right.
So I think that's kind of like an experimentation in itself, because my friend's experiences with his mom, who's elderly, and he's like, I have to be taking care of her. So I thought, maybe this thing, and then behind the thing, they have they even created like a lookalike robot that speaks to her. So it's a very short-term solution right now. But in terms of adoption, how do you see the adoption of this technology being taken by the people who would benefit from it? How do we overcome the obstacles per se?
The obstacles, as in, how do we get it out there? How do we get people to want it?
Because there are many obstacles. Number one, technology adoption, and number two is the society part.
I think there's an interest. I think some of it, some of the technology that's out there, adoption-wise, will be just something that kind of is slipped into other things. So cars that can detect when you're angry or upset or whatever, and then drive you, park up and call the emergency services. That will just happen. It's not like you buy the car and it's be in it, or you're drunk.
You're not going home.
They'll detect emotional states in you and park you up and so on. That will happen. I'm surprised that Tesla hasn't got that in it already, to be quite honest.
Or Uber.
And I think also things like Alexa and so on, they are already developing an Alexa that sounds more like it tries to recognize your emotions and tries to react. It's actually terrifying at the moment. If you try it, it's sort of the uncanny valley in voice form. It's sort of,
it's weird.
It's Hal from 2001 is what it reminds me of. Open the bay. Please open the bay doors, Alexa. What are you doing, Richard? It's sort of very strange. But it's I think that is one way. It's just going to be in the technology that you buy. It's there, the same way that suddenly you bought a phone and it had your emails and Facebook on it. And you went, well, okay, all right. And everybody had one, so you had to have one. More specific, bespoke stuff. Oh, that's the question. That's the question for marketers, surely. How do you market something? I mean, there are a lot of people that want to get in touch with their emotions. There's the whole mindfulness world out there. They love things that monitor their emotions. There are loads of apps out there already, loads of them, that monitor your emotions throughout the day and help you with your mindfulness and help you to calm down and all that kind of stuff. There's a market for anything with emotions written on it at all, pretty much. To get over, other than that, I mean...
Because there's going to be there's always the early adopters where most of the experimentation happens, and then that helps build towards the next push. I'll give you an example like what we've encountered. So HR is a big one, but still it's a minefield, precisely because like you said, there's a context to every person. So when they come in to be interviewed, if they came in during the in the afternoon, they probably had a bad morning. So you have to be cognizant of that stuff. If they came through traffic, they have that in their head. I mean, so you have to, and computers don't do that. So there's a lot of stuff that has to happen before we even get to the point where it's automated.
I mean, if it's evaluating people in HR, it's very careful to steer clear of the Myers-Briggs route, where
exactly.
I mean, lots of people adopt Myers-Briggs, but what result you get depends on your mood that day, so it's not great. I've been every single character type today at some point or other, depending on what I've been doing. So I think it's trust, though, isn't it? If you get it to the point where an AI can ask the right questions when someone comes in and you'll talk to this person in an interview environment, and it will be able to detect that you're a bit off, and maybe say, "How's your day been?" And you say that, and it can evaluate what that means, and then evaluate you. And it demonstrates that he's good at what he does because it employs 10 people who do a brilliant job.
Yeah.
A better chance. Then people will start go, okay, how much do you want for this? And you go, quite a lot. Because you can't live without it now, can you? And so that's the thing. I think it's a trust building thing in areas like that, but it's very tricky. I mean,
you still need the human in the loop.
Yes, you do. I mean, one of the questions I've been asked is, don't you think AI is going to take all our jobs? I say, well, for every 3 or 4 jobs it takes, it's probably going to create 3 or 4 people who have to look after it.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Exactly. It will just change jobs, We may see another revolution where we went from being farmers to being miners and steel workers. Now I go from being then we're computer programmers. Next will be AI people in the vast, huge economy.
Do you remember way back when the web started? There was a role called webmaster.
Yes.
So it's something similar is going to happen with these types of systems.
I also think there's going to be a moment of massive growth like those on the internet, and probably eventually a bubble and a burst. These things always happen, but I think there's going to be this moment where AI starts to look like it's really working. I think we're on the verge of it now. I mean, I got a Honor 10 phone, sort of a mid-range phone. It has an AI camera, so these things are already starting to creep into household things. And I think there'll be a point where lots of people throw lots and lots of money at it, which is would be a nice wave to catch for all of us. But it's and it will expand, and then Google will buy everything like they did last time. And but I think that's where it's headed. I think there's going to be a moment. I think it might be the next big revolution. The last one was computing, and I think AI is the next one.
Yeah,
which is why getting the emotions right is so important.
Correct. No, well, and on that point, there's also a big, it's an obstacle, but it's also something that we have to be cognizant of is overcoming the bias of, because all these data sets are biased.
Oh yeah.
And anybody who's doing emotion recognition is using either they're downloading images from the internet. Or some other method, and they're pretty much like you said. I mean, there's they were using images from 1970s.
Yep.
So how do you think we overcome that? Because that's a big problem.
I think this is where you tap into people who've been doing it for decades. There's a whole field of emotion psychologists out there. There's an effective research lab. I forgot where it is. Lisa will kill me, but there's a big, and we say to psychologists, would you like to come and work with us? Teach us how to build experiments that will avoid the biases. Teach us how to do this, because for every Paul Ekman experiment that came up with those faces, there's a James Russell experiment that showed the opposite, and they will say, right, so you want to run something like this and then run something like that, put the 2 lots of data together, and if both of them are telling you the same thing, great. If they're not, then you need to think again. That I think is one good way to tap into the existing expertise of the psychological and other communities. The psychology of emotions, the sociology of emotions, history of emotions are an interesting bunch because they look at how people have historically had feelings, if you like, and so they can come along and say, whoa, hang on a minute, you're in a bubble there, because that's what they do. They look at bubbles, so they know when they see them. All these people, bring them in, let them help. They'll do it. They're always looking for research. Anything they can publish and help their paper count to get them tenure, they're up for it. So that's the way to go. And they're good at
So tapping into your futurist side.
Yep.
I mean, I always talk to people and say, I kind of like the vision of this stuff is kind of like the movie Her.
Yep.
Where you get to talk to the computer and it talks back to you like it's a person, right? That's kind of like the utopia, I believe.
Yeah, the Turing test. Yeah.
Yeah, the Turing test, exactly. Do you foresee that happening anytime soon?
I actually think we're not far away, but I think we're not far away from it being so close that we won't be able to really tell the difference. Whether that means that they are thinking and feeling as a machine is another thing. But I have of the opinion that I don't know whether you're really thinking and feeling because I can't get inside your head. All I can do is discern from you that you are thinking and feeling. We get into really deep philosophy and qualia and all this kind of stuff here, but I think that it's not far off, and I think there'll be some massive ethical issues when it happens. I think we might end up with, because I was recently involved with a robot pet that's there for people that have depression and things. And it's almost at the point where it and a cat, there's not much difference between them, except one of them apparently it's ethical to take the batteries out of it, and the other one it isn't. Right. So what do you do there? How do we declare one living and the other not if you can't really? And I think it's the same. We'll have very soon a point where you can talk to something and it will act and it will feel, or it will appear to act, it will appear to feel, and everything will seem absolutely real. And that's where we start after asking questions. What is? I mean, does it? There'll be a religious camp that say, but they don't have souls. There'll be a non-religious camp saying, so what? There'll be a huge, interesting ethical debate. To be honest, if anybody out there listening to this wants to go into philosophy, that's the way to go because you'll be on the gravy train for life. There's money to be made in the ethics of AI in the coming years. But yeah, I think we will. And I don't think it's that far away, actually. Decade 2, maybe.
I think right now it's about crafting well or designing well-crafted experiences like the Sophia robot, which I saw I think it was yesterday or Sunday, where it says that it's like a person. The robot now has citizenship and is going to talk to the president, or I think the president over here. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is marketing.
Yeah. Is it good marketing though?
Because the robot doesn't wake up every morning and say, what am I going to do today? It's like, it's programmed. Somebody has to turn it on. Somebody has to turn it on.
But we'll maybe get to the point before long where a robot does wake up in the morning and thinks, what do I have to do today? In the same way, we're a couple of decades away from Deep Blue winning at chess.
There you go.
Yeah. We've now got them having conversations with the president. I'm not going to make any comment who I think the most intelligent person in that conversation is going to be, but I would like to talk to the robot given the choice. But I think, isn't it great? And I really think we're close to something that's alive enough for us to actually wonder whether it is or not, and have a huge, huge debate about life itself.
I think the other highly experimental area with this technology is in VR.
Yes,
is in VR. How? That's another question. But if you want a lot of data, because that's what VR creates. I mean, I was doing a demo on Saturday out of flying a plane. And I was getting off my chair, yet I'm sitting in the same place, and my face, I know my face was making the expressions like as if it was real.
There's actually some people in the psychiatry worried about it because they think that some of the experiences might be real enough that your brain thinks they are real, and they're kind of worried about virtual PTSD happening.
Wow.
Wow. So, because we don't know how the brain reacts to something if all the senses think it's there, your brain your subconscious just thinks it's there and acts accordingly. So
I've never thought about that.
It's kind of, but I'm sure work will be done on that. But I think that's an area where I was talking about the gaming. You're in a virtual game, and everyone around you appears to be real because you've programmed them with AI and artificial emotions. Again, even deeper question, are they real? When you switch the game off, are you murdering dozens of people or not? Because they may actually think that they think, It's the Westworld thing, isn't it? I don't know if you've seen the Westworld series.
Yeah,
it's
the Westworld series.
When they realize they think that they think, and so bad things happen. I don't think bad things will happen. I'm not like one of those who thinks we're heading for AI overlords. I think humans are smarter than that, and we'll make sure that they're better than us, basically, in that regard. But I don't think.
On that thought, because the military is used, and it's not usually, it's always ahead of step of everything. Yeah. Probably like a decade ahead before it makes its way to society. Are you familiar with anything that the military, even US or any other place in the world that's using this technology?
I don't know militarily. I have heard that some Chinese policemen have got sunglasses that can do facial recognition, and they're working on facial emotion detection, which is going really badly because Chinese people's facial expressions for emotion are very different from the West, but they're using the Western data set. So it really isn't fitting very well. But that's frightening that a policeman can look at you and see, perhaps work out that you might be about to do a crime. We get to Minority Report kind of levels of prediction there. And they'll get it wrong, I'm sure. So there's that. I mean, I'm sure we can take it as given that there will be AI drones if there aren't already. There will be drone warfare that doesn't even need a pilot. Well, if there isn't already,
there is one. I know the US has one. It's been on the news.
Yeah. Well, there's the dog, which is terrifying, and things like that. I'm pretty certain there's some in active service now, from various states, possibly China as well. Will have some in active service, and I do wonder though what use emotions are to these things. Because do you want them in the field, in the arena of battle? Do you want them to feel something? Surely that's what they spend months getting out of human beings, the ability to feel things.
Yeah.
So I don't think emotion tech will have much to do with the military, apart from in interrogation rooms. That's where it could be useful. Reading whether people are lying.
Correct.
And being able to detect what really gets to them. Is it loud music? Is it bright lights? Is it heat? Is it cold? And then moving things without someone having to be there. You could just leave them in a cell and the AI could track them and track their heart rate and things and interrogate them, polite way of putting it, accordingly, which is kind of worrying. So using AI and emotion tech for, essentially torture. It's not really what I want it to be used for, but
No, but humans have a way of using it for
good and ill. Yes.
All right, Rich. I don't want to take too much of your time.
Okay, it's fine.
Do you have any more parting thoughts before we part?
Not really. It's good to talk to you. I'm really interested in keeping an eye on the stuff you're doing as well as everybody else. I really do think that there is a mood to look beyond the 6 basic emotion model within the field, which makes me feel happy and warm inside. So I'll see how that goes. And thanks for having me on.
All right. So if anybody wants to reach you, where can they find you?
They can find me. I am on Twitter as Dr. Rich FG, and I am everywhere. If you just look for First God Be Here, there's only 2 of us on the planet. The one that's not female, that's me.
That's a good one. Okay. All right, Rich. Well, thanks so much, and have a good rest of your week.
Okay, you too.